There's a certain kind of person who walks into a room and immediately knows something is wrong. Nobody said a word. The music is still playing, the lights are the same, and everyone is smiling. But they felt it. That quiet, invisible shift in the air that most people will never notice. They picked up on the slight tightening in someone's jaw, the way a laugh ended half a second too soon, the almost imperceptible distance between two people who were standing just a little too far apart. And before anyone else has processed a single thing, this person has already run the entire scenario through their mind 3 times. If that sounds like you, then this is your story. Most of the world sees awareness as a good thing. We celebrate emotional intelligence. We admire people who read situations well and navigate relationships with precision. We respect those rare individuals who always seem to know exactly what to say and when to say it. But there is a version of awareness that goes so far beyond what most people experience that it no longer feels like a gift. It feels like a system that never powers down, a processor running at full speed, 24 hours a day, picking up signals nobody asked for and storing them somewhere in the back of the mind where they accumulate, layer by layer, until the weight of them becomes something physical. Science actually has a name for this. Researchers call it sensory processing sensitivity, and it describes a nervous system that is fundamentally wired to take in more information from the environment, both consciously and unconsciously, and then process that information at a far deeper level than average. It is not about being emotional or fragile. It is not about having a bad day or needing to toughen up. It is a biological difference in the way the brain handles everything it encounters, from sounds and lights to social dynamics and unspoken tension. And it affects somewhere between 15 and 20% of the human population. That means roughly 1 in 5 people you know is walking through life with a nervous system that never truly gets to rest. They are not dramatic. They are not difficult. They are simply tuned to a frequency that most people cannot hear. And the weight of receiving that signal every single moment of every single day is something that language rarely captures well enough. What makes this particularly fascinating is that these individuals are not imagining things. The heightened awareness they experience is not a distortion of reality. If anything, it is a more detailed version of it. Studies using brain imaging have shown that people with high sensory processing sensitivity display measurably greater activation in the areas of the brain responsible for awareness, empathy, and the processing of both internal and external information. The insula, which is a region deep in the brain connected to consciousness and self-awareness, shows consistently higher activity in these individuals. Their brains are not broken. They are simply more switched on, and that distinction matters more than most people realize. The daily experience of someone living with this kind of deep awareness is difficult to explain to someone who does not share it. Imagine sitting in a conversation and simultaneously tracking the literal meaning of every word being said, the tone behind the words, the facial expression that does not quite match the tone, the history you have with this person that makes certain phrases land differently than they would otherwise, and the emotional state you were already carrying into the conversation before it even began. Now imagine doing all of that simultaneously in real time, without choosing to, and without being able to turn it off. This is not overthinking in the casual sense that people often use the word. This is something neurologically distinct. Research published in major psychological journals has confirmed that excessive self-monitoring, which is the habitual tendency to observe and evaluate one's own behavior and the behavior of others in social settings, correlates strongly with increased anxiety and a decreased ability to simply enjoy being present in the moment. The mind becomes both the participant in an experience and the critic analyzing the performance, and that split attention comes at a cost. What makes it even more complex is that the awareness is not limited to social situations. People with this trait notice everything. The hum of a refrigerator that other people stopped hearing the first week they moved in. The shift in a friend's energy that happened before they said a word. The unresolved tension at the dinner table that everyone else has decided to ignore. The fact that someone's "I'm fine" carries a completely different weight today than it did last Tuesday. These are not choices. They are automatic, constant, and exhausting in a way that is genuinely hard to communicate to someone who does not experience it. One of the most misunderstood aspects of this kind of awareness is how it interacts with the body. The brain and nervous system are deeply connected. And when the nervous system is processing at this level of intensity, it leaves physical traces. Fatigue that shows up without obvious cause. Headaches after long social interactions. A sensitivity to physical sensations, sounds, and environments that feels disproportionate to those observing it from the outside. The body keeps a running tab on all the processing that the mind is doing, and eventually it presents the bill. This is not weakness. It is the cost of operating an extraordinarily complex internal system that was never designed to be switched off. The working memory, which is the part of the mind responsible for holding and using information in real time, becomes strained under these conditions. Researchers have noted that individuals in states of heightened self-monitoring often find that their ability to think clearly in the moment is compromised because so many cognitive resources are already being used up by the act of monitoring itself. It is the mental equivalent of running 40 applications on a laptop while also trying to render a film. The whole system slows down, and what looks like confusion or indecision from the outside is actually the result of a mind that is carrying far more than anyone else can see. Yet these same individuals often possess something remarkable precisely because of this burden. The depth at which they process everything means they also process meaning more thoroughly than most. They connect ideas and emotions in ways that others miss. They understand nuance in storytelling, in relationships, in the unspoken agreements that hold communities together. Their inner world is rich in a way that can become a genuine gift once they understand what it is and stop trying to suppress it. The relationship between this kind of deep awareness and the people around the person who carries it is one of the most complicated parts of the entire experience. Because the acutely aware person notices things that others do not, they often find themselves in the unusual position of carrying information that nobody else in the room has consciously acknowledged. They sense the tension between two colleagues before the argument happens. They know that a relationship is shifting before the other person has said anything. They pick up on the quiet grief someone is carrying long before that person is ready to talk about it. This creates a particular kind of loneliness that is difficult to articulate. It is not the loneliness of being isolated or unloved. It is the loneliness of existing in a slightly different version of the same room as everyone else. Of being surrounded by people and yet experiencing a reality that nobody around you is quite accessing in the same way. Of knowing things you were never told and then having to decide, over and over again, whether to say something or whether to carry the knowledge quietly the way you always do. Many people with high sensory processing sensitivity develop a deep fear of being misunderstood. Psychologists have traced this pattern extensively, and the findings are consistent. People who process deeply tend to have had early experiences where their emotional responses were dismissed as excessive, where they were told they were too sensitive, too intense, or too much. Those experiences leave an imprint. The person learns that their internal world is not welcome in the external one, and so they begin to manage it privately, building elaborate internal structures to contain what they feel while presenting something far more manageable to the people around them. The result is a kind of double life that requires enormous energy to maintain. On the surface, they function, they show up, they engage, they often excel in roles that require empathy and emotional precision. Beneath the surface, they are processing at a depth that nobody sees, carrying the emotional weight of interactions long after the interactions have ended. Replaying conversations not out of each possession, but out of a genuine need to understand every layer of what happened. And when they get home, when the door closes and the performance is over, the exhaustion that sets in is not the mild tiredness of a regular day. It is something closer to the fatigue that follows an extraordinarily demanding event. What psychology consistently finds is that this is not a pathology to be corrected. It is a trait as fundamental and inborn as eye color or height that shows up across cultures and across species. High sensory processing sensitivity has been identified in over 100 animal species, suggesting it is an evolutionary adaptation that has persisted because it serves a genuine function. In ancestral environments, having a few members of the group who processed information at this depth meant the community had early warning systems, careful thinkers, and individuals capable of understanding complex social dynamics in ways that kept everyone safer. The problem is that the modern world was not built with those people in mind. Open offices, constant digital notifications, back-to-back social obligations, and an accelerating pace of life all pile additional load onto a nervous system that is already working harder than most. What once made a person a valuable sentinel becomes a liability in environments that reward speed over depth and efficiency over sensitivity. One of the most compelling areas of research in this space involves what happens inside the brains of deeply aware individuals when they are exposed to the emotions of others. Studies have found significantly greater activation in the mirror neuron system of people with high sensory processing sensitivity. The mirror neuron system is essentially the biological architecture of empathy. It is the network that allows you to feel a shadow of what another person is feeling simply by observing them. In people with this trait, that network is running with considerably more power than it does in the general population. This means that the emotions of the people around them are not simply observed, they are absorbed. A deeply aware person does not just notice that a friend is sad, they feel the weight of it in their own chest. They do not just recognize that a conversation was uncomfortable. They carry the discomfort with them after leaving the room. They do not just understand that someone is struggling. They process it on a level that is almost indistinguishable from their own experience. This is both the source of their extraordinary capacity for compassion and the origin of one of their greatest challenges. Learning to distinguish between what belongs to them and what belongs to someone else becomes one of the central tasks of a deeply aware person's emotional development. Without that skill, the accumulation of absorbed emotions can become overwhelming, not because the person is fragile, but because they are carrying multiple emotional realities simultaneously. The brain is extraordinarily good at tracking all of this, but the cost of that tracking is high, and without strategies for setting it down, many deeply aware individuals find themselves depleted in ways they struggle to explain. What makes this particularly poignant is that many of these individuals are the people others turn to instinctively. They are the friends you call when something is wrong, because they always seem to understand exactly what you are feeling before you can put it into words. They are the ones who notice when you are not quite yourself and who ask the right question at the right time. They give because they cannot help giving. because the awareness that makes them absorb your pain is the same awareness that makes them want to do something about it. But in giving, they often forget to protect their own reserves. The same depth of feeling that makes them extraordinarily present for others can make it difficult for them to assert their own needs with the same clarity. They understand everyone else's experience so thoroughly that they can always find a reason why their own needs are less pressing. Over time, this creates an imbalance that takes years to recognize and even longer to address. The path back is not about becoming less aware. It is about directing some of that remarkable awareness inward with the same compassion they extend outward. The good news, and there is genuinely compelling good news here, is that deep awareness is not a burden without counterweight. The same nervous system that makes life overwhelming in certain conditions also makes it extraordinarily rich in others. Research has consistently shown that individuals with high sensory processing sensitivity have a heightened capacity for aesthetic experience. Music does not just sound pleasant to them, it moves through them. Art does not just look beautiful, it communicates something that bypasses language entirely. Nature does not just provide a pleasant backdrop, it is a source of genuine restoration that operates at a biological level. The depth of processing that creates difficulty in overstimulating environments is the same depth that makes creative work feel natural and necessary. Many of the most celebrated thinkers, artists, writers, and innovators throughout history have displayed characteristics consistent with this trait. The ability to find connections others miss, to sit with complexity without needing to resolve it immediately, to feel the weight of an idea fully before moving on, these are not incidental advantages. They are the creative engine that drives work of genuine depth. Studies have also found that individuals with sensory processing sensitivity make more careful decisions when given adequate time in low-pressure conditions. The thoroughness of their processing, which can feel like a liability in fast-moving environments, becomes a significant asset when precision matters more than speed. They are the people who spot the flaw in the plan before it becomes a crisis. They are the ones who read between the lines of a contract and catch what was never meant to be caught. They are the individuals who understand what a situation means, not just what it looks like. Perhaps most importantly, the neuroscience around this trait suggests that the brains of deeply aware individuals are primed for a specific kind of emotional intelligence that goes beyond simply feeling things. Brain imaging research has demonstrated higher activation in the prefrontal cortex during complex social processing, indicating that these individuals are not just reacting emotionally, but are also engaging the higher reasoning centers of the brain in their understanding of relationships and situations. They do not just feel their way through the world. They think their way through what they feel. The combination of those two processes produces a quality of insight that is genuinely rare. The challenge, then, is not to quiet the awareness. It is to build a life that creates enough space for it to breathe, to seek environments that reward depth rather than punishing it, to build relationships with people who find the richness of this kind of mind something to be curious about rather than something to be managed, to recognize that the exhaustion is real, that the need for solitude after intense social engagement is not antisocial but biological, and that the sensitivity is not a design flaw but a design feature that simply requires different conditions to operate at its best. If you have recognized yourself in any part of what has been described here, then you already know what it is to carry more than others see. You know what it is to notice everything, to feel deeply, to understand in layers, and to return home from an ordinary Tuesday feeling like you have run a marathon that nobody else even knew was happening. And the most important thing to understand is this: you are not broken. You are not too much. You are not imagining what you feel. You are simply someone whose nervous system is alive to the world in a way that most people will never fully understand. And that, in all of its difficulty and all of its beauty, is one of the most quietly profound ways there is to be human.